Welcome to See and Free Studios. This is Jennifer Longian, and this is the place that we come to talk about what makes us unique, special, and different. And I want to talk about why we started this show and how it came to be. And I am super excited about the guest I have here because he's been a big part of this journey. As many of you know, I started this podcast during a sabbatical I was taking from work just to kind of find myself a little bit, reconnect with what I love, and reconnect with the people in the world out there to understand kind of what makes them tick, what drives them, what they love, what they're passionate about. And I've gotten to meet so many amazing people through this show. We are now in our second season, and we thought it would be fun to show you around the show and introduce you to the person behind the show, Mark Nicholas. He is our guest today. Mark is the owner of Manhattan Beach Studios, where we film here in LA. He's been a lawyer. He's an author. He spent time in the creative world as a musician, an audio engineer, a Grammy judge, a photographer. He's a video producer, as you probably can tell from this show, and I consider him, quite frankly, an inventor because he comes up with amazing different ways to do different things. I am super excited to introduce you to our producer, Mark Nicholas.
Hey, Jen.
Hey, Mark. So you know this show better than anyone after doing this. I don't even know what episode we're on. We've filmed so many. But I came to you last summer and said, hey, I looked you up online. I saw that you can help me produce a podcast. And I was super excited that you gave me this opportunity and decided to work with me. So thank you.
My pleasure.
Yes.
I'm glad.
Well, so the whole purpose of the show, as you know, is talking about our unique, special, and different. But I thought it would also be fun, like as we talk about you and put the spotlight on you for a change, that we talk about how this show came to be, how do we do this each time we do it, and maybe give people a little bit of a glimpse behind the curtain.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm not really sure where to start.
Yeah.
The shows we do here are very specific to people's goals.
Yeah.
Some people are here just to sell product or to make money or to cross-sell their brand, their personal brand. They want to speak. And so others have a message. Everybody has their own particular purpose for doing something. And one of the things we try to do is we try to figure out how to best tailor a product, our product, for what their product is. And in your particular case, you know, we there was a message, there was a goal and a way of you know, something we wanted to present. It's different than trying to sell T-shirts, and that was a lot of fun for me. We don't get to see that every day.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate you being so willing to help me spread this message, and helping me along the way, because you've been a fantastic guide, not only in helping me think through how to do a show, get over my own issues and fears around being in front of a camera, but even how to market the show. So how did you get into this, Mark? How did you get into this world?
Well, I have always been jealous. When I was in college and my friends played the guitar, I wanted to play the guitar. So I played the guitar. And then they took a studio engineering class, and I thought that they had it better than I did. And so I took a studio engineering class. And so essentially my friends George and John and all these amazing characters, they just made me jealous. And I became a tag-along. And then my teacher who's one of the greatest sound engineers, I think, in the world. He's part of Whitney Houston's team. He essentially got a job working to build Whitney Houston's studio, and was no longer going to be able to teach the class. And he bribed us by saying, if you agree to not tell on me because I can no longer teach, I will allow you not only to come and help build the studio with me, but I'll put you on the road with any band you want to go on the road with. And I ended up touring with Meatloaf and 10,000 Maniacs and a little bit of Squeeze and Robert Palmer, and had the time of my life. And so when I became a lawyer, I already had a foundation that was loaded with creative. And so it really just took a couple of bad days as a lawyer, and I ended up here full time.
So, I mean, because every time I talk to you, I learn something new. I had no idea you worked with 10,000 Maniacs, for instance. But I did know you were a lawyer. So, a lawyer. I know you've written a couple of books. I've learned that about you as well. Mark, the whole purpose of this show is to talk about like what makes us unique, special, and different. And given like all of the different, facets of your life and things that you've done, what would you say is your unique, special, and different?
Well, I get jealous.
So you've got serious FOMO. That's yours.
That's right. I honestly, it's what's interesting is it's almost like a fear of missing out, but it's without the fear.
Yeah.
I have always been willing to fail, and as a result, I put my first CD came out. I'm not a great musician, and I'm certainly not a great vocalist. And I went out and I realized I needed to make money. To do this, I needed to raise money. So I went out and I sold 400 copies of a CD that I had never made. I hadn't walked into a studio, and I wasn't a good musician. And that sort of embodies my life. But the other part that I think makes me, I don't know if it makes me different, but it certainly gives me an advantage over many of the people who I see around here, is that I was going to fail, and I found a friend. I found the person to hire, and he saved me. I was going to embarrass myself. I was going to put out a product that was terrible. And my friend Andre Smith out of Philadelphia stepped in and he took care of me. He made sure the record was a good record. And that's been the luck of my draw, which is fearlessness, and then get bailed out by friends.
And you've had, but fearlessness. A Grammy judge. You've obviously taken that little glimpse into the creative world and now become a producer. So it doesn't sound like you just like try things. You go all in, like when you go in.
Yeah, and it's Grammy judge. I'm a voting member of the Grammys, along with 18,000 others.
Yeah.
We would vote. I do. You look around the studio and you see a studio that we tried to build in order to be a really cool broadcast facility. We can go head to head with anybody. In order to do that, we had to learn all the cameras. We had to learn all the sound. We had to stay up all night watching YouTube videos, because it's not enough to be fearless, I guess, if you're not going to learn your gear and ultimately embarrass yourself. Yeah. And so we keep setting the bar pretty high, and we do our very, very best. And every so often we catch a break, I guess.
Yeah. Well, has there been, speaking of breaks, has there been something that you've poured your heart into, poured all of your energy into, taken the time to kind of learn and dive in, that just for you is monumental when you kind of reflect back on all the stuff that you've done?
I don't know. I'm very proud of a lot of the things that I've done. Yeah. And a lot of what I've done has maybe seemed more monumental at the time. The only thing that's monumental, I think, that I've done is my daughter. That's when I think I pass away. And my father, this was the same case with my father. He was a doctor. He was a flight surgeon. He was very respected in his small town community, and he was a nice guy, and all of these wonderful things that make him who he is. And I still remember the obituary didn't mention any of that. Mm-hmm. It skipped over the career part of things. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that all of the things that I do here are going to be the part of me that ultimately is what lives on. And so hopefully my daughter it helps to take some of what we've built in terms of our personalities and our style and lives on. Hopefully the people we help a lot. We work with a lot of businesses, and hopefully we make their lives easier and better, and they remember us fondly. And I don't know. I think that the greatest moments of my life really involved something almost non-monumental that were sort of mundane and otherwise forgettable if it wasn't for the fact that it was me and being there.
Yeah, that's cool. And I think we talk, you've seen the show, you've seen every show. We talk a lot about like, parenting and just the impact you could have on communities and the people around you. And you think about your daughter and you think about kind of the things that you've learned along the way as you've kind of explored your unique, special, and different. What guidance or advice would you give to her as she's going out in the world? How old is she again?
She's 12.
Yeah.
The only guidance that I think I know, and I'm actually writing a book right now called The Bachelor's Guide to Childbirth, a former Bachelor's Guide to Childbirth. And I'm trying to offer up my 200 pieces of advice that I would offer to the world. And it's very tongue-in-cheek. Yeah. As a lawyer, I know I give a lot of advice, and I also know that very little of my advice is followed. We don't like to get advice. Mm-hmm. We're independent creatures. And even if I were to ask you what your favorite restaurants are, I'm thinking about going out for dinner tonight, the likelihood of me actually following through with that, it may be small. I don't know. We like to be confirmed in our position more so than we like to be told. The only thing I've tried to learn, that I think I've learned and I tried to live by, is that for her to like me, I have to respect her. Mm. And that's it. When she does the good stuff, we try to compliment her. When she does the bad stuff, I try to treat her in the same way with respect that I would expect to be treated if I made a mistake. We punish ourselves more so. And the only time we stop punishing ourselves is if we get mad at others. And so as long as I can, be respectful and understand who she is and what she feels, hopefully we'll live to see another day. Yes,
and hopefully more people will adopt that same sentiment as they, trying to connect with other individuals, respect them, learn from them, and let them, find their way. So I love that. So I thought it would be fun since we're together and you're usually, so just for anybody that's watching, normally Mark's over here and he's telling me what to do and I'm not used to him being here. But I thought it would be fun to just tell people a little bit how this kind of comes to be, this show, and all the stuff that you're doing typically when I'm sitting here. I'll give you guys a little bit of a background on the show. Normally you see a different background literally to the show, which is a green screen of my shed in my backyard where I normally work from. And I normally have, you probably see sometimes on here on the desk, some figurines that my children gave me. And those were important to have in the show. The graphics that are done in the show are by my wife. So it's a bunch of us coming together and making this show possible, but Mark kind of makes it all come together. I get the guests and then he makes everybody look good and sound good. And Mark, tell people what you're doing, because literally right now you're running the show while we're talking.
Right.
So explain what you're doing.
Well, basically what we do is we build a show.
Yeah.
And so we know that the way the show flows, we know that there's going to be an opening and we know that we have to cut to you. And then ultimately we are going to need to cut to your guest and we're going to need to have a title on the screen and things like that. Yeah. And we take all of these assets and we put them together and we actually just make them happen. So the work really is done before we ever get started. Yeah. It's all been built. Now, my phone right here, for those of you out there, is I'm not just tapping on it like getting messages, although I am getting messages. We are actually cutting the show. So from here, I can cut over to Jen. I come back to the 2-shot. I can come back to me. I can add a lower third for myself. There we go. If I wanted you to subscribe to my show, I'd hit this button here and we'd subscribe to my show, but Jen will get to that later. Yeah. So we're basically, in the same way that we've really built the whole show out, I can then build a system so that I'm able to then simply trigger the next piece as we go. Yeah. And it's a lot of fun. And then the other part of what we're doing is that we're communicating live. Yeah. And so I'm able to talk to you and tell you when we're going to start, when we're going to switch, if there's something we need you to do, like all of a sudden you've sat back too far or you're feeling a little drunk at the moment and slouching down. Yeah. We'll make corrections as we go. And then for the remotes, we put a screen so that you could see your guest
Yeah.
and talk to them. And then we're feeding their audio back to your ear so it doesn't feed back through the microphone. And so there are a lot of little technical things, but we have it pretty dialed in.
Yeah. Well, and that's something that struck me when I met you, when you were explaining kind of what you do and how you do it. It was in the middle of the pandemic, of which we've seemed to be endlessly in. You were telling me just how you had to adapt, for some of the technology to make it possible for people to remote in and to make it feel so connected from a show perspective. Can you explain some of that technical stuff for the rest of us?
I mean, we were very lucky. We were well positioned before COVID ever hit. We had worked with one of our vendors just to build the system that we used in order to connect, the way we connect to Zoom. Mm-hmm. So we were already broadcasting through Zoom, but with titles and graphics and cuts and the whole thing, way before it was even a thing.
Yeah.
And so we didn't have to do a lot of adaptation there. Mm-hmm. We repositioned our control room. We started to work with guests differently. In many cases, many of our guests stopped coming in at all. But we continued to run their shows with them as a remote as well as their guest as a remote, putting them all side by side. The biggest thing we did that I think we're the most proud of is that we were asked to run lots and lots and lots of virtual events, in particular graduations, with thousands of kids. And in probably overall, we'd probably say at this point, it's got to be 100,000 awards. It's these 60 kids win this English award and these 40 kids get the math award. And we did this for school after school after school. And if we would have had to build graphics for those, it would have been impossible. And it broke a lot of production companies. They couldn't handle it. But we reconstituted a lot of systems that were not built for this. They were built for driving sports scores and things like that. And we essentially drove thousands of kids' graduation graphics through spreadsheets, and it really taking technology that was built for something else and using it for this. And it was amazing. We were able, for this year's graduation season, we drove 25,000 graphics live to the screen. So no one had to build them all, and we were able to pull this off. We worked with the schools to get the components together, the kids' photos and whatnot. So there's a lot of that, and the great thing about that is that we're never going to stop using it. Mm-hmm. So what we built was not temporary.
Yeah, which is great. And you can scale it, and like you said, you adapted something that was for one purpose to make it for this purpose. And mm-hmm. one thing that always strikes me in working with you is that you're super freaking fast. People don't know this, but we don't do very much editing. Mark doesn't do too much editing because he's just so fast. Like, we do so much live, and then you turn it around really fast. But the same with the graduations, right? You explained, like, because it was live and you were able to do those feeds, you didn't have to do a ton of, work on the back end.
Yeah, if we would have had to do a ton of work on the back end, we couldn't have done it.
Yeah.
When I say it broke a lot of production companies, we were getting reports from companies that would take on one graduation, and they'd have to build slides for 800 kids, and they'd have to, and it was a complete nightmare. The system we converted was essentially the same kind of a system you would use for baseball games. That there would be a graphic for a player on first, and another graphic for a player on first and second, another graphic for a player on first and third, another graphic for second and third, another graphic for second. So it was a very discrete universe of graphics that probably totaled, I don't remember all of my math, but 4 times 4 is probably 16 potential combinations or something like that. And you're going to get comments on that tell me how wrong I am. But we took that system and simply added thousands of kids' photos to it. We took something that might have been built for 20 and we turned it into 1,000, and we added their names. So what might have been one out with the player on first, and we turned it into the kid's name and their picture, and we added field after field after field, and essentially we basically rebuilt the way graduations can be done, and had a great deal of success at that. So had we not thought about that in advance, and struggled with it the first time, we wouldn't be fast.
Yeah.
So our speed came from, we wanted to try something. And this is the other thing, back to the no fear.
Yeah.
We knew how our system worked, but we didn't know if it could do that. But we ended up taking the jobs with the idea that there had to be a way to do it. And if there wasn't, we would have gotten in trouble. So we did it from a fairly fearless perspective. We said, we know we can make this thing work. And the first one was clunky. We thought we did it, but we had to redo it again and again and again in order to try to get the product to look the way we wanted. But now with 2021 hitting, we just did it, 16 more times, and we got this down.
Yeah, and you did a lot of both. They're mostly virtual, right? Graduations, and then some. This was live. This last round.
It was a blend.
Blend.
Yeah, it was a blend. Some of the schools were live, some virtual, and some. And this is the future now, and a lot of them were live with a virtual component.
Yeah. Well, it's impressive. I'm always impressed. Every time I come back into the studio, there's new gadgets in here and things that for Mark to play with and learn. And like you said, fearlessly, just kind of throw yourself in, learn it, figure it out, and go for it. Well, let's see if you fear this, my friend. As you know, we come up on this one part where we ask a random question. You don't know these questions, but it's 1 through 25. Which number would you like to choose?
2.
2. All right. What is one question you've never been asked that you're now ready to answer?
Oh.
It's a hard one.
It is a hard one. I don't know. Give me some thought. Give me a second here.
Okay. Take your time. You'll probably edit out if it's a long pause.
I don't know. I can, put the camera back on you. I think now I'm starting to think more about what happens after I'm out of the studio.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I'm ready to answer it yet, but I'm trying to be ready to answer it, which is what happens next.
Yeah.
I've done this now a long time. I practiced law for 25 years in between large firms and large corporations, and there I didn't have to worry as much about things like retirement. The issue there was just maybe what house I wanted to buy or something that was that was a very corporate type of an answer. But now I think the question really is what's going to happen to the legacy we've tried to build, and who's going to take over it. And I wish I could say I knew how to answer that yet, but I will tell you I'm working on it.
Yeah, so. I love that. That's a question I think a lot of us are faced with at some point in our life and don't necessarily want to answer it until we need to. But once you figure it out, let me know, because I'll be somewhere behind you thinking that through.
I know.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in. I think we're all kind of reflective this year, especially just about what matters in life and what we want to do and where we spend our energy and our time. So it's definitely on people's minds.
Well, it's the kind of law that I still practice.
Yeah.
So I'm very passionate about planning and what happens when people die, not to them, but to their families. And we actually are starting our own show on that very topic.
Yeah.
And I spend a lot of time helping other people try to figure out that answer. And that has nothing to do with the studio, except for the fact that we try to get the message out with the studio's assets. We have cameras and microphones, and that means that we have a platform we can use. But that planning part is something that I worried more about other people up until now, and now I'm starting to think about it more in terms of my own.
Yeah. Well, you're fearless, my friend. You'll figure it out.
We'll try.
You will. Another thing that you've been super supportive of and helping me figure out how to reach the world with, and you even taught. So again, I always say there's a skew on the camera if you're watching this on YouTube that you can click on and go straight to donating to one of our nonprofits. And Mark helped me figure that out. Mark, you want to talk about a nonprofit that's matters to you called Walk with Sally. I don't know this one. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, Walk with Sally is, one of the things we've done here at the studio is we have worked with a lot of philanthropic organizations. We've done a lot of fundraising for them virtually, and Walk with Sally is a program that I ended up involved with as a photographer. I took some images of the founder and his family, and I've gotten to know the organization. And what they do is they have a mentorship program that mentors the children and siblings of parents who have cancer. And so they kind of step in because at that point the family's worried about medical issues. And so this charitable organization steps in and helps to take care of the kids. And so they take the kids to the zoo, or they do all kinds of things like that. And it's an organization located right here in town. And they're filled with really amazing people. Nick Arquette, the founder, is an incredible guy, and his staff are delightful. They're all heart. And we helped them raise a lot of money here in the studio. We did all kinds of fun things, and people at home could play games and interact, and it was great. We've donated our services as part of their silent auctions for years, and we love what they do. And one of the things I love the most about them is that they're not big. They're really down home, and you know that what you contribute actually gets used in order to fund their program and make sure that people are helped. So we're into them. We dig them. Let me put up the QR code there. Here's the QR code.
There we are.
And we're proud to be involved with them and to help them out. And if anyone's interested, click this QR code because they're awesome.
Yeah, and Mark mentioned for those of you that are watching or listening, because we actually have a lot of listeners, Mark. I'm super excited.
Oh, yeah?
We've been getting a lot more listeners too, especially on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Those are some of our more popular ones. But if you're listening, Walk with Sally, and you said it's here in town, Manhattan Beach. If people look it up. It's funny because I think they may be right on the border. I know Nick lives in Manhattan Beach, but their offices might be across the street, which might be El Segundo. Okay.
But regardless, from this building, we could hit their building with a rock.
Okay.
They're located right here.
Good. Sounds good. So if you're listening, look them up, Nick Arquette, and please donate. That's something that families go through, and this organization's trying to help people. Unfortunately, a lot of us are dealing with family members who are going through cancer and having treatments, and you do need just as much support for the families so that they can be supportive of their family members. So thank you for that, and thanks for bringing attention to it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So besides helping me keep this podcast going, what's up next for you? What are you working on?
Well, apart from the podcasts and the photo stuff, and we are working on our own. We've got a documentary on this planning thing in the works, and we're working on a Netflix series and things like that. So we are out there, not just helping you, but we're working on our own content, and trying to stay cool this summer.
Yes.
and hydrated. Mm-hmm. And so,
Very cool. Well, I'm excited. As soon as you are ready to share all of those projects, please let me know and I will promote them for our audiences. And I really, really enjoyed working with you. I'm so glad I stumbled in here last summer and met you. There's another person that's been behind the scenes named Spencer, and Spencer is working the sound for us today. So thank you, Spencer. If you can hear us, Mark and I really appreciate you. He's been with our little podcast as well all along. Mm-hmm. So thanks, Mark, for sharing you with the world, coming out from behind the camera to join me today. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to doing this over and over and over again.
It's my pleasure. Have a good time.
Yes. Well, thank you. Thanks for sharing your unique, special, and different. And I want to thank everyone for coming out and joining us today. Whether you are watching us or listening to us, please subscribe to seeandfreestudio.com. You can find us just about anywhere now. We are so glad to have you. Thanks for sticking with us through the first season and now season 2. Thanks, everyone.